account in this criteria, that is joint involvement, serology, acute phase reactants, and duration of symptoms. So if one large joint is involved, the score is not given. For 2 to 10 large joints, 1 to 3 small joints with or without involvement of large joints, 2 4 to 10 small joints with or without involvement of large joints, 3, and more than 10 joints, of which at least one should be a small joint, that is score 5. And then serology, at least one test result is needed, that is either negative RF and negative ACPA, the score is given 0. Low positive rheumatoid factor or low positive ACPA, score is given 2. High positive RF rheumatoid factor or high positive ACPA, the score is given 3. Then certain acute phase reactants are considered, that is CRP and ESR. Abnormal CRP or abnormal ESR, the score is given 1. And then finally the duration of symptoms. If it is less than 6 weeks, no score. If more than 6 weeks or equal to 6 weeks, the score is given 1. And the score of 6 or more than 6 out of 10 is diagnosed as a rheumatoid arthritis. So a score of equal to 6 or more than 6 is needed to classify as rheumatoid arthritis. So in serology, the two tests are given, rheumatoid factor and ACPA. Do you know what is ACPA? You can write down your answers. What is ACPA? Now coming to the pathology of rheumatoid arthritis. What actually happens in rheumatoid arthritis? So there are autoantibodies formation against the synovial cells. So what happens in the initial stage? The synovium gets edematous, filled with fibrin exudates, and there is a cellular infiltrate. And this hypertrophied synovium, there is accumulation of synovial fluid along with hypertrophy of the synovium, and then it forms a pannus. So as you can see, the pannus formation, with the pannus formation, the cartilage loses its smooth and shiny texture, and when this cartilage is affected, the pannus starts eroding from the periphery of the cartilage, and then gradually this pannus burrows into the subchondral bone. So this is the sequence how this pannus is responsible for damaging the cartilage as well as the subchondral bone. And when this cartilage is worn off, the raw bone surface is exposed, the joint starts getting deformed, and this deformation is again precipitated by the fibrosis of the capsule and other soft tissue structures, and ultimately it may end up in fibrous ankylosis, and fibrous ankylosis then gets converted into bony ankylosis, and there can be subluxation of the joint because of the deformed joints. This pannus, there is a formation of adhesion between the opposing layers of pannus, and then fibrous ankylosis is set, which later gets converted into bony ankylosis. But due to damage of the capsule, synovium, and soft tissue contractures, there is a subluxation of the joint. So this is how the joint is affected in rheumatoid arthritis. In this picture, you can see the opposing layers of pannus formation are seen clearly, which are eroding the articular cartilage as well as the subchondral bone. And which cells are accumulated in this pannus? In pannus formation, these are the T cells, B cells, dendritic cells, synoviocytes accumulation. So in the first photograph, a normal joint is shown where you can see the normal cartilage, the capsule, the synovial membrane, and now there is accumulation of these immune complexes, that is T cells, B cells, dendritic cells, sinusoids. They gradually start eroding the cartilage, and then finally the bone is eroded, causing the rheumatoid arthritis. So this is how the hip joint is involved due to damaged cartilage in rheumatoid arthritis. So this is again the inflamed synovial membrane is shown, and major cell types are T lymphocytes, macrophages. Minor cell types are fibroblast, plasma cells, endothelium, dendritic cells, and neutrophils. So these are the various autoimmune complexes. How this rheumatoid arthritis occur? When the genetically predisposed individual is exposed to certain infectious agents. So it is assumed that some infectious agent, genetically predisposed individual is exposed to some infectious agent like Mycoplasma, Clostridium, Epstein-Barr virus. There is a formation of immune complexes, and these immune complexes are responsible for the destruction, and these immune complexes are shown in this figure. So out of which the anti-citrullinated peptide antigen antibody, anti-citrullinated peptide antibody, this recognizes the type 2 collagen in the joint, and because of which there is a destruction of the cartilage. So ACPA is, initially I asked what is ACPA. It is anti-citrullinated peptide antibody, which recognize the type 2 collagen in the joint and starts destroying it, initiating the process of rheumatoid arthritis. So this rheumatoid arthritis passes through the various stages. The first stage is stage of synovitis. The initial lesions occurs in the synovium, which leads to vascular stasis. Then there is infiltration of the synovial layers with inflammatory cells and formation of fibrinous exudate. Then there is a synovial hypertrophy, occurs with the thickening of capsular structures. Then second stage is called as stage of destruction. Here there is a pannus formation. The hypertrophied synovium along with the granulation tissue leads to the formation of pannus, which encroaches the articular cartilage from its periphery. So it starts encroaching from the periphery. Then there is a articular cartilage destruction. The articular cartilage gets destroyed gradually. Further, the bony surfaces are involved. It leads to the obliteration of joint space. The joint gets destroyed and deformed. And finally, there is a stage of deformity. What happens in this stage? The extending granular pannus, it gets organized into fibrous tissue, which bridges the articular ends, and it leads to the fibrous ankylosis. Along with fibrous ankylosis, there is a damage to the ligaments, which are involved, leading to joint subluxation or dislocation. Then muscle, tendons, soft tissues around the joint also undergo inflammatory changes and get contracted, or they get ruptured. And then there is a juxta-articular osteoporosis. So this is the stage of deformity, last stage. So how to diagnose a patient with rheumatoid arthritis? The age is typically between 20 to 50 years. That is the common stage, but it can occur in the old age population also. The occurrence below the age of 20 years is less. And females are affected 3 times more than males. What could be the reason of this? You can write your answer in the chat box. What is the reason that the females are affected more commonly than the males? Estrogen, role of estrogen. Yes, how this is responsible? How role of estrogen is responsible? So estrogen it has a immuno enhancing effect. So the females have a better immune system as compared to males, and since estrogen has having a immuno enhancing effect as compared to males who have testosterone, and this testosterone is a bit immunosuppressive. So that is why the females are more commonly affected than the males. So estrogen is the correct answer. It is acute symmetrical polyarthritis. There is a pain and stiffness in multiple joints. Now this is important. Stiffness, morning stiffness. What is the reason of morning stiffness? This is a classical symptom of rheumatoid arthritis, morning stiffness. Why this stiffness occurs in the morning hours? Morning stiffness occurs there is an accumulation of synovial fluid. In a resting position, when the patient is sleeping, there is a due to synovial hypertrophy, there is accumulation of synovial fluid within the joint. And when the patient gets up in the early morning, he experiences stiffness during the activity. But as the time goes, with some period, this fades away, the stiffness. Why this happens? Because this is absorbed by the lymphatics and venules gradually. So this accumulated fluid is absorbed by the lymphatics and venules. The patient feels better after 45 minutes or 1 hour. So now coming to the common joints which are affected in rheumatoid arthritis. The common joints affected are metacarpophalangeal joints of the hand, proximal interphalangeal joints of the fingers and toes, wrist, knees, elbow, and ankles. So small joints of the hand and feet, they are the commonest joints involved. Which is the second joint after hand and feet which is involved commonly in rheumatoid arthritis? Chat box. The second commonest joint which is involved, I will tell the answer later on. So less common joints are hip joint, temporomandibular joint, and cervical spine. So again, I have a question for you. Which cervical joint is affected by rheumatoid arthritis? C1, C2, that is the correct answer. Reason? C1, C2 is the right answer. Reason? Okay, so for that part, yes, synovial joint is a correct answer. So you should know the various types of joints, structure of the joints. So the joints are mainly of three types according to structural pattern. That is fibrous joints, cartilaginous joints, and synovial joints. So the most of the joints in the body, they are of synovial variety. While the fibrous joints, can we give one example of fibrous joint? skull, that is fine. And in forearm, any joint in forearm? Interosseous membrane bridging the middle part of the radial ulnar joint, that is fine. Can you give the example of cartilaginous joint? Pubic symphysis, yes, that is right. Intervertebral joints, growth plates, okay. So this synovial joints are affected by this rheumatoid arthritis, as you know, because they attack the synovium. So you can find this type of picture, various deformities in rheumatoid arthritis. First is ulnar deviation of hand and fingers. Why there is a ulnar deviation of hand and fingers, which is called as ulnar drift of the hand. Ulnar deviation, the reason is the long extensors which are involved, they are displaced into the ulnar side in between the metacarpal heads. So the long extensors, they are involved and they are displaced into the ulnar valley in between the metacarpal heads on the ulnar aspect, and that is why there is a ulnar deviation of hand and fingers. Then other deformities, Botanius deformity, Schwann neck deformity. We'll discuss in detail about these two deformities and their management. In elbow, you get flexion deformity. In knee, you get early flexion deformity and triple deformity. But remember, in knee, the involvement of the bone is, it is, the primary involvement is in the synovium. The bony involvement is rare. So if there is a bony involvement, if the patient is untreated, the patient may land up in triple deformity of the knee, which is the triple deformity has three components: flexion, posterior subluxation, and external rotation. So you get triple deformity in very late cases, but primarily in knee there is an involvement of synovium. The bone erosion is less common. In ankle you can get equinus deformity, and in the foot you can get hallux valgus and hammer toe deformities. So these are the various deformities which is, so you can see the various deformity. In the first picture you can see the rheumatoid arthritis in a late stage where there is a Botanius deformity of thumb, ulnar deviation of metacarpophalangeal joints, and Schwann neck deformity of fingers. In the second picture, you can see the olecranon bursitis. Then, in the third picture of the toe, you can see the hallux valgus and deviation of toes, lateral deviation of the toes. Then you can see the extensor tenosynovitis. The first picture in the second column, second row. And you can see the fusiform swellings of the metacarpophalangeal joints in the middle picture. Then you can see the accumulation of synovial fluid in the knee. And there is a, in the first picture of the last row, you can see olecranon bursitis and various deformities of the hand and deposits, nodules you can see on the dorsum of the hand. So these are the various deformities in the hand, toes, and forearm. due to rheumatoid arthritis. So now coming to the Z deformity of the hand. Z deformity of the hand assumes the position of Z, because what happens, there is a ulnar deviation at the metacarpophalangeal joints, that is MCP joints, and radial deviation of metacarpals at the wrist. So the wrist is deviated radially and the fingers are deviated ulnarwards. So this deformity is called as Z deformity of the hand. And you know the reason why there is a ulnar deviation, because of the slipping of the ulnar drift. It is due to the displacement of extensor tendons into the ulnar valleys between the metacarpal heads, producing an ulnar moment of pull to the fingers. So this is an illustration of Z deformity of hand and wrist. The wrist is going into radial deviation and fingers are going into ulnar deviation at the metacarpophalangeal joint. Now coming to the swan neck deformity, how this, you can see in the first picture, the middle finger is gone into a swan neck deformity. So in swan neck deformity, you should be able to differentiate between the swan neck deformity and cutaneous deformity. What happens in swan neck deformity? There is a hyperextension at the PIP joint, proximal interphalangeal joint. There is a hyperextension, and there is a flexion at the distal interphalangeal joint. So why this occurs? Why this PIP hyperextension occurs? Do you know the intrinsic muscles? Intrinsic muscles. Chat box. Lumbricals and interossea, and their function is they flex the metacarpophalangeal joint and they extend the interphalangeal joints. So in rheumatoid arthritis, what happens? There is a contracture of the intrinsic mechanism, that is called as intrinsic plus hand. When the intrinsic muscles are overactive, they are called as, that is called as intrinsic plus hand. And due to this tightness of the intrinsic muscles from the metacarpophalangeal joint, they pull the proximal interphalangeal joint into hyperextension. And also there is a damage to the holar plate. The holar plate on the holar aspect of the PIP joint, due to synovitis of the PIP joint, there is a destruction of the holar plate. And what happens when there is a destruction of the holar plate? The extensor apparatus, which is inserted on the base of the middle phalanx, it is inserted on the base of the middle phalanx. It becomes hyperactive and it again pulls the PIP joint into hyperextension. So always remember, the PIP joint is primarily involved in swan neck deformity. Okay, you want me to repeat this point? Okay, why this swan neck deformity occurs? This intrinsic mechanism, that is interossea and lumbricals, they are tight, and intrinsic mechanism, the primary function of the intrinsic mechanism is they primarily flex the metacarpophalangeal joint and they extend the interphalangeal joint, PIP joint. So when there is a contracture in rheumatoid arthritis, there is a contracture of the intrinsic mechanism. So it is hyperactive. So when it becomes hyperactive, it again pulls the PIP joint into hyperextension. And also there is a damage to the Höhler plate due to synovitis of the PIP joint. So these two factors, they aggravate the extension at the PIP joint. So primarily in Schwanneck deformity, the PIP joint goes into hyperextension. And then what happens once the PIP joint goes into hyperextension? It causes the dorsal displacement of the lateral band. Lateral band. There are two lateral bands on the ulnar side and the radial side. So there is a dorsal displacement of the lateral bands. Due to this dorsal displacement of lateral bands, there is a laxity because normally they are centrally placed. Since the PIP has gone into hyperextension, there is a laxity of the lateral bands, and due to this laxity, they are no more able to pull the DIP joint, and then it goes into flexion. The DIP drops into flexion. Getting my point? PIP is a primary. See, the distal interphalangeal joint is not primarily involved by rheumatoid arthritis. It is the MCP joint and PIP joint which are involved, primarily involved. DIP is not involved primarily in rheumatoid arthritis. In which condition DIP is involved? It is not Höhler's plate, it is Höhler plate present on the Höhler aspect of the PIP joint. Okay. Osteoarthritis, one more condition can you name? Where there is an involvement of distal interphalangeal joint apart psoriatic arthritis. Okay. So there is a primary involvement of the PIP joint. This goes in hyperextension due to tight intrinsic muscles along with damage of the Höhler plate, which is present on the Höhler aspect. Höhler plate is a flexor component present on the Höhler aspect of the PIP joint, which gets damaged due to synovitis. And then there is a extensor pull which is inserted on the base of the middle phalanx, which then again pulls the PIP into hyperextension, and this PIP hyperextension then causes DIP flexion, secondary DIP flexion, because the lateral bands are shifted on the dorsal aspect, which are lax and unable to pull or extend the DIP. You can see this lateral bands which are normally placed on the, which are centrally placed, due to laxity they are shifted dorsally and they become more lax, and now they are unable to pull the distal phalanx. So finally they go into flexion, DIP goes into flexion. That is a Schwanneck deformity, and reverse of this is Boutonniere deformity. What happens in Boutonniere deformity? There is a classical central slip rupture, attenuation of the central slip. So what happens when there is a rupture of the central slip? See, this is a Boutonniere deformity. In Boutonniere deformity, it is reverse to that of Schwanneck deformity. The PIP joint is in flexion, and then the DIP goes into hyperextension. So here the primary pathology is again in the PIP joint. Because of the PIP synovitis and central slip rupture, there is a flexion at the PIP joint, because due to the rupture of the central sleeve, the extensor pull is lost. दिखा है the central sleeve is ruptured, and due to rupture of the central sleeve, the extensor pull is gone, and why it is called as buttonhole? This bone is popping out of this central ruptured tendon. So the meaning of buttonhole is buttonhole. It has causing buttonhole through the ruptured central tendon, and due to this PIP joint goes into flexion because the extensor pull is lost. And now what happens? These lateral bands are now shifted towards the polar side. In the Schwann neck deformity, they were shifted to the dorsal side. In Boutonniere deformity, these lateral bands are shifted on the Huller aspect. Since they are shifted on the Huller aspect, the pull on the distal phalanx is increased because this band is now tightened due to shifting on the Huller aspect. So now it pulls the distal phalanx into hyperextension. So there is a primarily flexion at the PIP joint and then secondary hyperextension at the DIP joint. So in Boutonniere deformity, there is a PIP hyperextension and then secondary DIP flexion. In Schwann neck deformity. In Boutonniere deformity, there is primary flexion at the PIP joint and secondary hyperextension at the DIP joint. Okay, these are the causative factors for Schwann neck deformity and Boutonniere deformity. So, how will you confirm your diagnosis? By seeing the X-rays. What all things you want to see in X-ray? In rheumatoid arthritis, there is a reduced joint space. There are erosions of the articular margins. There is a subchondral cyst, juxta-articular rarefaction, soft tissue shadow is seen due to effusion, and you can see the various deformities. This is a picture of the X-ray of the normal hand, and this is a X-ray of the rheumatoid hand where you can see the bony erosions and bony displacement. So subluxation has occurred in the late stage of the arthritis. Thumb deformity, toe deformities, and C1, C2 subluxation. So you can see very clearly on a flexion extension views. So you can see the distance has increased on a flexion view, C1, C2. There is anterior translation of the C1 as compared to C2. I think these things are taught to you in medicine, but just to revise few points, extra articular manifestations of rheumatoid arthritis, that is vasculitis, digital arteritis, Raynaud's phenomena, fever, skin lesions, chronic leg ulcers, peripheral neuritis, necrotizing arteritis involving coronary mesenteric renal vessels. Then rheumatoid nodules, the commonest site is olecranon. Then other sites like dorsal surface of forearm, tendo-achilles, lung and pleura are involved, serositis, pleurisy, cardiomyopathy, pericarditis in heart, iridocyclitis, then peripheral neuritis, nervous system involvement, peripheral neuritis, carpal tunnel syndrome, anemia, Feltis syndrome, Sjogren syndrome, and amyloidosis. What is Feltis syndrome? What is Feldis syndrome? Neutropenia, splenomegaly. That is fine. Few more components. How do you remember components of Feldis syndrome? How do you remember all 5 components of Feldis syndrome? Santa, SA and TA. S for splenomegaly. A for anemia. N for neutropenia. T for thrombocytopenia. And last A for arthritis. Correct. And what is Sjogren's syndrome? Sjogren's syndrome. Conjunctivitis. In Sjogren's syndrome, finger, wrist, ankle, elbow can be involved, along with scleritis, episcleritis. So these are the extra articular manifestations of rheumatoid arthritis. So you must know the various conditions to differentially diagnose this rheumatoid arthritis. You must know the difference between the osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis. In a patient, if the DIP joint is involved, you must suspect osteoarthritis, not rheumatoid arthritis. And mainly the weight-bearing joints of the lower limb are involved in osteoarthritis. Involvement of DIP joint of the hand is less common, but they do get involved in osteoarthritis, and it is a aging process. It is primarily due to degenerative disease of the cartilage, where the cartilage is there is a fibrillation of the cartilage due to aging process, and then gradually there is exposure to the subchondral bone, and it is very common in the knee joint and hip joint osteoarthritis, primary osteoarthritis. While rheumatoid arthritis is uncommon in large joints like hip and knee. The primary affection is in the hand and feet joints. Then there can be a psoriatic arthritis. So you have to differentiate psoriatic arthritis again, distal interphalangeal, and spine involvement is common in psoriatic arthritis. So you should also remember this point. Spinal involvement is common in psoriatic arthritis. In gout, which crystals are seen? Gout. Urate crystals, sodium biurate crystals. So which joint is involved commonly in gout? It is also called as a monoarthritis. First metatarsophalangeal joint of great toe is commonly involved. What is the other name for that? First metatarsophalangeal joint of great toe. Involvement due to rheumatoid arthritis is called as podagra. And pseudogout. Pseudogout, which crystals are formed? Calcium pyrophosphate. Calcium pyrophosphate crystals are formed, and they are deposited in the which joint? In pseudogout, knee joint meniscus. They are deposited commonly in the meniscus, causing chondrocalcinosis. Chondrocalcinosis. So other uncommon joint which is involved by pseudogout is metacarpophalangeal joint. That is the another joint which can get involved in pseudogout, metacarpophalangeal joint. So you should know this differential diagnosis. Then out of these various pathological arthritis, which joint is non-erosive arthritis, which is a non-erosive arthritis. It doesn't cause erosion of the bone. That is called as non-erosive arthritis. Can you name the example of non-erosive arthritis? So these are the common sites. Differential diagnosis again can be ankylosing spondylitis, SLE, Ritter's disease, gout, pseudogout, osteoarthritis. What is Ritter's disease? What are the three components of Ritter's disease? Conjunctivitis, urethritis, and arthritis. Okay. Then SLE. SLE. Which joints are involved by SLE? It is shown in the figure. PIP joint. PIP joint is commonly involved due to SLE. So if the patient is having DIP joint involvement, you suspect osteoarthritis, psoriatic arthritis, or reactive arthritis. If the PIP joint involvement is present, you first assume it as a rheumatoid. Then osteoarthritis, SLE, and psoriatic arthritis. If metacarpophalangeal joint is involved, you assume rheumatoid or pseudogout or hemochromatosis. And if the ridge joint is involved, it is usually rheumatoid arthritis, pseudogout, gonococcal, juvenile. This dequerens tenosynovitis. What is that? Okay, in osteoarthritis again, first carpometacarpal joint is also involved. That is the commonest joint to get involved in osteoarthritis of the hand.
Why the reason of sparing?
Dequerens tenosynovitis. It is a type of dequerens tenosynovitis. It is a type of inflammatory synovitis of the tendon sheath. And when you call it as a dequerens, there is a tenderness over the radial styloid process. And which two tendons are responsible for causation of this dequerens? What are the two tendons? It is a extensor tendon tenosynovitis. It is a extensor tendons tenosynovitis, dequerens. It is an inflammation of the synovial sheath covering the extensor tendons. And in dequerens tenosynovitis, two tendons are involved. No, they are not ECRL and ECRB. You can write down your answers. Two answers you have to write down. Which arthritis is non-erosive doesn't cause erosion of the bone, and second is what are the tendons which are involved in dequerence. Next. So we'll do the examination of the synovial fluid to establish our diagnosis. For that part, you should know the normal, what are the normal components of the synovial fluid. It is a colorless to straw colored, transparent. WBC count is less than 200, PMN less than 25%. On culture, no growth is found. Mucin clot is firm, and glucose content is almost equal to blood. Now coming to inflammatory arthritis, the volume will be more than 1 ml because of the effusion. Then viscosity will be low, color will change to yellow, it will be translucent, counts will raise up to 75,000, and PMN will go more than 50%, culture will be negative, clot will be friable, and glucose count will be less than 50. And in septic, the count goes very high. It is a turbid solution, and the count raises more than 1 lakh with predominantly PMNs, 85%, more than 85%, and the culture is positive, friable. So this is the synovial fluid examination for the to establish the diagnosis and to rule out the other diagnosis. The ESR is raised, the hemoglobin is low. Rheumatoid factor, this is an autoantibody directed against the Fc fragment of immunoglobulin G. That is a classical rheumatoid factor test. But there are certain conditions in which you get false positive results of this rheumatoid factor. And in which condition you can get false positive rheumatoid factor positive? You can get this false positive report in chronic infections, other rheumatic diseases, and in Sjogren syndrome. And even in 10% healthy population, you may find this rheumatoid factor positive. So that is why anti-CCP is more specific, and anti-CCP, that is anti-cyclic citrullinated polypeptide, it is more sensitive and specific than rheumatoid factor, because these autoantibodies they recognize the collagen 2 of the cartilage, and that is why it is never positive in healthy individuals or normal individuals, which can be present in normal individuals. In rheumatoid factor can be positive in normal healthy individual, but this test is never positive in healthy individual, and false positive reports are or chances are less as compared to rheumatoid factor. Now coming to the principles of treatment, aims of treatment. So in orthopedics, the induction of remission and its maintenance, preservation of joint function. This comes, second point comes in orthopedics, preservation of joint functions and prevention of deformities during the activity of the disease by physiotherapy, splinting, and repair of joint damage. I won't go into details of medical treatment, that must have been covered. NSAIDs, DMARDs, steroids, all are used. Coming to the physiotherapy part. So splintages are given. Various splintages are given for in proper position during the acute phase. Remember, the disease should be diagnosed in acute phase before the deformity is established. So you can try various physiotherapy measures like heat therapy, wax bath, hot water fomentation for symptomatic relief, joint mobilization exercises to maintain joint functions. If the patient stops moving the joint, what will happen? The patient will develop contractures. If the patient doesn't move joint due to swelling and pain, gradually the patient can develop various contractures. So you must maintain the joint functions and use the various muscle strengthening programs. But that is useful in the initial phase of the disease. Operative methods, it consists of preventive surgery. If the synovium is inflamed, you can go for synovectomy, commonly done at the knee, wrist, and metacarpophalangeal joints. Then palliative surgery, some relief can be provided by limited surgical procedures like bone block operations. And finally, you may need reconstructive surgeries when in case of fixed deformities like tendon transfers, interposition orthoplasties, and total joint replacement. These are the various surgical procedures, operative methods. Synovectomy, inflammatory tissue is removed and disease synovium is removed. It may result in less swelling and pain and slowing or prevention of the further damage because the synovium contains the pannus. And once you remove the pannus, the effect of encroachment, the effect of eating away the bone is minimized. So in that way, the synovectomy helps. You can do arthroscopic surgery for synovectomy. You can see the red hypertrophied synovium, and you can see the subchondral bone damage due to this synovium, which is shown with the artery portion. The subchondral bone is getting damaged due to this encroachment by the synovium, and the synovium has turned red and edematous, filled with fibrin exudates. You can perform various osteotomies. Osteotomy means it is the meaning is surgical division of the bone. This increases the stability by redistributing the weight on the joint. So you can see the toe picture where there is a bunion formation due to the hallus valgus deformity, and this is the protruded bone, that is bunion, is cut and then it is aligned. So this is a hallus valgus, and second toe is hammer toe. So both deformities are seen in the foot rheumatoid arthritis, hallus valgus and hammer toe. So this surgery is performed for the correction of hallus valgus. It is called as modified McBride surgery. Modified McBride surgery. The metacarpophalangeal joint is deviated towards the other toes, and that's why we need to release the deforming forces like abductor hallucis, flexor hallucis brevis, lateral capsule. All these are released, and then medial eminence is resected. On the second photograph, you can see there is a resection of the medial eminence, and once the medial eminence is resected, there is a imbrication of the medial capsule. Imbrication of the medial capsule is done to provide tightness over the medial aspect so that it doesn't again go into towards the other toes. So these are the photographs of hallus valgus. You can see in the first photo there is a formation of bunion, and then there is a correction after bunionectomy, and hammer toe is also corrected. You can see on the second photograph there is a correction of the hammer toe by putting the wire, correction of the hammer toe. So you need to calculate the metatarsophalangeal angle. Normally, what is the normal angle? And when you call it as a LS valgus, when this angle crosses this much degrees, it is called as LS valgus. You may write down your answers. Then you perform various joint replacement surgeries. It is the surgical reconstruction or replacement of a joint, that is new joint is established. In the first X-ray, there is a orthodesis, that is a surgical fusion of two bones. When the deformity is reversible, the deformity is established, you can fuse the opposing bones in a straight position. That is called as orthodesis or fusion. And when you replace the joint with artificial joint, it is called as orthoplasty. So these are the tiny implants which are used for the replacement of the metacarpophalangeal joint. You can see on the second X-ray, this MCP joint has been replaced by artificial prosthesis and orthodesis is done. That is fusion of the done. Fusion is done in the first X-ray. So Schwann neck deformity, as I told in the initial period, that there is a flexion at the metacarpophalangeal joint, and primarily there is a hyperextension at the proximal interphalangeal joint, and then flexion at the DIP joint. So these are the various deforming forces which I have already discussed with you. And now we do the surgical correction of Schwann neck deformity. Before that, if it is not fixed, you can use thermoplastic figure of 8 splint, which prevents the hyperextension of the proximal interphalangeal joint. So that is in the initial stages, this splint works before the deformity is established. And for the surgical correction, you do reconstruction of oblique retinacular ligament. Reconstruction of oblique retinacular ligament. So you can remember, there is only one thing you can go for reconstruction of oblique retinacular ligament. That will, this ulnar lateral band is turned around and fixed to the fixed on the ulnar aspect, ulnar band, so that will counteract the deformity. So you don't need to go into details, just remember spiral oblique or ligament reconstruction is done. Along with, you can go for tenodesis of the FDS to create flexion at the PIP joint. That is more easier for you. Tenodesis of FDS. Tenodesis of FDS. Since the PIP joint has gone into hyperextension, you need to provide flexion during correction. So you can do tenodesis of the FDS. Conservative management for deformity, you can give various splints for the relief of pain, but you cannot revert the damage that is done by only surgical process. You can give various appliances, splints, part fomentation, which is given in the initial phase also. But once the deformity is established, it is always treated surgically. So surgical correction, you can see all Schwann necks are corrected to a relative better position with spiral oblique ligament reconstruction and FDS tenodesis. And you can apply silicone arthroplasty for MCP joint. Orthoplasty. These are the tiny implants which goes into the medulla of the phalanges and metacarpals and then provide new joints. Silicone. This is conservative management by splint which prevents flexion at the PIP joint. This is for Boutonniere deformity. In Boutonniere deformity, there is a hyperflexion at the PIP. In Schwann neck, there is a hyperextension at PIP. Here there is, so you can give various splints which maintains the correction. In thumb, again MP is in hyperextension, IP is in flexion. So you can correct it by orthoplasty and combined procedure, tendon transfer. Here, thumb correction is done by fusion of the carpometacarpal joint. So that will provide at least pain relief. And see, wrist replacement is done in this case, having this wrist arthritis. Orthodesis is done in the second X. You can see orthodesis, that is fusion of the joint. So the advantage of arthroplasty is it gives the movement, better movement. Orthodesis, there is a fusion, but there is no pain after orthodesis. That is the advantage of orthodesis. So these are the various plastic molds which are done for the various foot deformities, which are called as total contact orthotics for severe deformities of foot. Plaster mold is given for the rheumatoid foot, and various orthotics are made. These are the various orthotics which are made for the foot deformities. So that is in the initial stages to avoid the established deformities too. And once the deformity is established, you can go for various surgical procedures like forefoot arthroplasty, various fusions of the joint, because multiple joints may be involved. So you can go for talonavicular fusion, tibiotalar fusion, total ankle replacement. All these are surgical procedures for the rheumatoid arthritis of the ankle and foot. Talonavicular joint fusion. All these joints, even you can go for triple orthodesis. For C1, C2 instability, we can manage it again operatively. We need to provide the support, and the support is provided with the help of pedicle screw fixation. So this pedicle screw fixation can be done in C1, C2 spine where there is a rheumatoid arthritis. Hip replacement. Yes, various hip replacement procedures are done. Remember, involvement of hip joint by rheumatoid arthritis is very, very uncommon, and when it is involved, it is usually a monoarticular arthritis. So when it is involved, the option is total hip replacement. Knee joint involvement, again I told you, the synovitis is a common presentation in the knee joint, but if it is involved, it is due to secondary erosion due to synovial proliferation or synovial accumulation. So you can go for knee replacement, and these options are very well available. So I think this is all about the rheumatoid arthritis. And
thank you so much. It was a great question, and you made it very easy for us to understand the complexity of rheumatoid arthritis.
Okay, so some
So
questions.
we have few questions related to the topic.
Yes, yes.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
So the first question is plus. Hello, sir. Am I audible?
No.
You're not audible clearly.
Hello, sir. Sir, am I audible?
Yes.
Sir, am I audible to you?
Yeah. You can go ahead
So the
with
first
your question.
So the first question is pes planus a case late stages of rheumatoid arthritis?
Yes, pes planus. It is a feature of the late stage of the rheumatoid arthritis. You can, along with the various deformities of the ankle and foot, you can get pes planus.
Second question is there formation of pus since neutrophils are present?
Formation of what?
Formation of pus.
So she's saying, is there formation of pus because neutrophils are present?
No, there is no formation of pus. It is a non-infective arthritis. There is no formation of pus in rheumatoid arthritis.
Sorry, which is the non-erosive arthritis?
And
So the
anybody answered about
last
non-erosive
question is there
arthritis?
negative management?
Pardon?
So the answer which came up was psoriasis.
No. SLA.
I asked which is non-erosive arthritis. You can write down the answer. Okay, SLE is the non-erosive arthritis.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
The two tendons involved in.
And which two tendons you have answered already?
That's a
Two tendons are EPL and EPL plus APP. These are the two tendons. Extensor pollicis longus and abductor pollicis brevis are the two tendons which are involved in dequerence.
Angle of hallucis. Angle of hallucis.
Angle. I asked about the angle.
Hallux valgus.
To cause it as a hallux valgus. More than 20.
Normal.
Yeah. Hallux valgus angle more than 20. More than 20. That is the correct answer. The angle should be more than 20 to call it as a hallux valgus.
Metal on metal. Female mother. Metal on metal. Any more questions?
Any more questions?
Yes, sir,
Yes.
two more questions are there. One is there any conservative management for the deformity?
Yes, conservative management is in the form of symptomatic relief that can be provided. If the disease in the late stage, you can provide some relief with the help of splintage, physiotherapy, but that is not a permanent cure. For permanent cure in a late stage where there is a established deformity, you have to intervene surgically.
Okay, thank you, sir. So there's one more question. Involvement of any particular joint indicates worse prognosis.
Worse for poor prognosis.
Poor prognosis.
Multiple joint involvement is indicator of poor prognosis. No specific joint indicates any poor prognosis, but if it is a polyarthritis involving multiple joints symmetrically, then it is definitely a poor prognosis, and causation is quicker. The disease advancement is quick, not responding to medical treatment. That indicates poor prognosis.
Thank you, sir. Is the pannus visible in radiograms?
No, pannus is not visible. It is not visible on. It erodes the subchondral bone, and then subchondral erosion is seen on X-ray. That indicates the pannus has damaged the subchondral bone, but pannus is not visible on X-ray.
Thank you, sir. Sir, one last question is there. After synovectomy, couldn't pannus form again?
Yes,
So is it a curative
yes.
treatment?
After synovectomy, the penis can form again if it is the synovectomy is done subtotal. If the total synovectomy is done, if the part of the synovium is left, which is not visible on during the operative procedure, then it can again form a pannus and damage where it is left alone. So again, pannus can form if it is a subtotal synovectomy. In case of total synovectomy, the chances are very less.
Okay, sir. Thank you. And sir, one more question. What is the content of pannus?
Pannus in the earlier slide, the various cells, T cells, B cells, synoviocytes, macrophages, all they together form the pannus. This is slide for you. Pannus. Major cells are T lymphocytes, macrophages. Minor cells are fibroblasts, plasma cells, endothelium, and dendritic cells.
Z deformity.
Um, Thank you so much, sir. I think these are all the questions.
Okay.
Thank you so much, sir. And for all the participants, the post-class form will be sent to you on mail by today evening.
Okay.
Thank you so much for attending. Thank you so much, sir, for presenting.